today's edition of Ghana in 24 with me, your regular host, Edem Kudu. Now, if you would remember, in yesterday's episode, before I finally took my leave, I told you of a very strong statement the Supreme Court put out in its judgment concerning the NDC versus the EC with regards to the ongoing exercise. Well, in today's episode, I'll bring you all the gist to that, and we'll go through the judgment together, as the Supreme Court has made some really very important claims that we have to be looking at going forward. Also, yesterday news came out that Interpol had issued an arrest warrant for some Ghanaians. Initially, people said it was false. It came out that it could be true and all that. I'll give you all the details on that too, and what actually led to this call by Interpol. If we have time, I might delve into a bit of football news today. I'll be back after this short break with the details. Okay, so you are welcome back to Ghana in 24. Now, in my first story, which is actually my lead story for today, we are going to delve into the Supreme Court and the EC and the NDC. Now, if you would remember, I think in either my first or my second recording, I spoke about the Supreme Court passing a judgment on the NDC suits they filed against the EC concerning the EC deeming the previously held voters' ID card as not valid to be used in this current registration. So I basically told you the ruling that happened, but the Supreme Court informed us that before the 17th of July they would give us the full written ruling and make it available to the public and all this. So yesterday I managed to get the ruling. I promised you that I was going to read it and then come in and give you the takeout from it. And so this is what it is. I'll go through the ruling with you, and if you want to have the ruling yourself and maybe read and get to know the full context of whatever was put out, you can check the description of this video and find the link there, download, and then get educated for yourself. So now let's move into the issue itself. Now, on the 19th of March, as I earlier said, the NDC took the EC to the Supreme Court, and they basically had two cases. First of all, they were saying that the EC could just hold a voter registration exercise once, and what they are supposed to do is occasional revising. And if the court didn't give that to them as an alternative, then the court should rule that a current voter ID is valid for any subsequent voter ID registration. So what they were saying was that the CI 126 that the EC put out, which didn't include voter IDs in this current registration exercise, was a violation of human rights. And so these are the two things that the NDC asked for. Well, after the statement of cases were filed and all that, on the 11th of June, the Supreme Court told the NDC this, that over here you cannot ask that give me A or B. You should decide to choose one. You cannot say that if you don't give me A, then give me B. They should just choose one out of the relief they wanted. So the NDC withdrew the first relief that they wanted, which had to do with the voters register being done once and for all. Now, interestingly enough, a day after, which is the 12th of June, a private individual, Mark Tichi Benson, also filed a suit in the Supreme Court. In the suit, he now asked for that which the NDC left out. So he was saying that the EC could just do a registration once and subsequently revise the register. Then also he added his own claim that the birth certificates cannot also be excluded from the required IDs for the registration. And so this was actually the case. Now the Supreme Court consolidated it, and after they took the various hearings, they gave their final ruling on June 25th, of which the full written ruling is out now. So this is basically a summary of how we got here. So now let's get to the main ruling. So in the ruling, we have three bones of contention that we are looking at. One, the ability of the EC to go ahead with the registration without a pre-existing voter ID. Two, the ability for the EC to register and register again. And then three, the issue of the birth set. I'll tackle it in accordance to how the Supreme Court tackled it. And the first one was the EC's ability to compile a register multiple times. Now, if you go to the Constitution, Article 45A, this is the function of the EC. It says that to compile the register of voters and revise it at such periods as may be determined by law. Now, interestingly enough, this article was used by both sides. So, with the private individual saying that they can just compile once, he used this article. The EC lawyers also, as a defense, used this article. So this is how they both put it out. Now, the plaintiff, which was a private citizen, according to him, this is what he said, that the Constitution says to compile the register of voters and revise it at such periods. So, per their understanding of the Constitution, they are just supposed to register once and revise it as and when need may be. And this is what they were saying to be the case, that the Electoral Commission can actually just register once. Now, on the flip side, the EC and then their lawyers, this is their defense. We are coming to move from a law class to an English class. So, don't worry, we'll just do this together so that we understand what is happening. So, if you read this, according to the EC lawyers, they are saying that there was no punctuation in the statement. It says to compile the register of voters and revise it at such periods as may be determined by law. There was no punctuation there, and so with basic English, the as such periods as may be determined by law applies to both the compilation of the register of voters and the revision of it. And so I could give you an example of make sure you brush and bath every day. You cannot say that the everyday refers to just the brush, and then as for the bath, you can do it just once. And so that was basically their case. And interestingly enough, the Supreme Court agreed with that. The Supreme Court agreed with that, and so that was patched out as the reason why the EC can do multiple registration as and when they feel it is necessary. Because according to the Supreme Court, that sentence should be taken as a whole and not be taken in different parts. So that's the first case. Now to the second case, which was also a very interesting one. Now this part is where the NDC really wanted in their favor. So according to them, they are saying that the voters ID, the current voters ID, or the then voters ID should have been used in the current exercise ongoing. Now, if you go to Article 42 of the Constitution, these are the requirements for somebody to be registered as a voter. One, the person should be a citizen of Ghana. Two, 18 years and above. And three, of a sound mind. Now, this is where it gets interesting. In the first CI that was leaked in regards to electoral registration and all that, which was CI 12, 1995, there was no form of identification needed. And so anybody at all could just go there and then go and write a name, do 1, 2, 1, 2, and your name was captured. According to the Supreme Court, from where they stand, the EC realized that this was a problem. And so in their subsequent registrations in 2012 and 2016, using the CI 72 and CI 91, they tried to correct that. And so in trying to correct that, that is when they said you can use a passport, you can use a pre-existing voter ID, you can use a guarantor system and all that as a means of correcting the first problem. But then over there too, there became another problem to the Supreme Court. According to page 16 of the manual that was used for that registration, it said that presenting of proof is however not mandatory. And so according to the Supreme Court, especially in the 2012 registration, people had their names captured without presenting any proof that they were citizens. And so if in this 2020 the EC sees that in correcting all these anomalies, they should just do a fresh registration where this time proof and all that should be mandatory, then it is not a violation of anybody's right. Now to the final thing that has really got people talking a lot on social media. The Supreme Court is saying that a birth certificate is not a form of identification. Now according to them, the birth certificate does not identify the bearer, neither does it link the holder of the certificate to the information on the certificate. So let's say you are holding a birth cert, there's no way of finding out whether you are actually holding your birth cert or somebody else's birth cert, and so it does not provide an evidence of citizenship. And you're also saying that in past this birth cert has never been used for registration, and so it will be more like a step back to come and then add this if we are trying to make the voters register as clean and as credible as possible. This is a very long run. Let's take a short break. When we come back, I'll briefly take you through the Interpol Airbus saga, and then we'll call it a day. Stay tuned. You're warmly welcome back to Ghana in 24. My name remains Edem Kojo. Now quickly to our second story. Yesterday, Interpol issued an arrest for one Mr. Samuel Adam Mahama. Now for those of you who don't know what exactly this is about, this entails an Airbus scandal that came out and rocked the world in January this year. So Airbus, a leading producer of aircraft, is alleged to have paid some bribes to some countries in order for them to get more like aircraft deals. And it came out that this Mr. Samuel Adam Mahama actually received bribes in the Ghana case. And so the Office of the Special Prosecutor, led by Mr. Martin Amidu, actually got a warrant from a court in Ghana and then passed it through the police to make a red notice alert for Mr. Adam Mahama for the crimes of accepting bribe to influence a public officer and also acting in collaboration with the public officer for the public officer's private gain. Now he is likely to spend 25 years in jail if he is found guilty. But in some very interesting twist, a private legal practitioner, Mr. Godwin Tamakulu, speaking on CTFM, says that all this is a political gimmick. According to him, Mr. Mahama, who happens to be a UK citizen, wasn't even arrested in the UK. And so for Ghana to try and then arrest him, it's like we just want to bring up this issue because it's possible that he is even not guilty of these crimes that were made. Yesterday, people were saying false, people were saying it's true, but yes, it's really true. News came out that if you check the Interpol website, you wouldn't see his name on the red notice list and all that. But what happens is that this is more like a procedural step. So the police tries to Interpol Ghana, Interpol sends it to their affiliates across the world. Then the person's name is captured in the system for him to be arrested wherever he is. So it is true that Mr. Mahama is wanted in Ghana by the Interpol. I'll do a quick story before I take my leave. Ghana, really in football, has seen some very, very big transfers from Michael Essien, Baba Rahman, and all that. But for some time, we've not really been big in the news, with the exception of midfielder Thomas Partey. Now, another young Ghanaian, Mohamed Kudus, who is 19 years, has signed for Ajax Amsterdam in Netherlands, and it's a great step to bringing Ghana back in the light of football. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, and let us know what you are thinking. My name remains Edem Kojo. As always, stay safe, have a wonderful weekend, and see you, God willing, Monday. Goodbye.